Welcome back to the Mustang Hockey Virtual Hot Stove. We're pleased to have everybody on board for the fourth edition of our 2021-22 Virtual Hot Stove series here in very, very snowy London, Ontario. It's been a lot of inclement weather today, so I hope everybody locally is home safe and sound. As always, our very famous Ryan Robinson will be our trusty dusty host, asking the questions, running it from his Central Command headquarters in the basement of his house here in London. We're so lucky to have Ryan on board with us for the second year of the Hot Stove, and he does such a wonderful job. So thanks and welcome, Ryan. And a very special edition of the Hot Stove tonight. When we started this series a couple of years ago, we really wanted to make sure we had a true Mustangs hockey alumnus on every year. So I'm very, very pleased tonight to welcome Dave Roy to the Hot Stove. Dave went to Western, attended law school from 1972 to 1975. He practiced with the team for a year because he only had 1 year of eligibility remaining after playing in the NCAA. And then he played in 1973-74 for Coach Whipper Watson, who I hope's on board. So tonight for the show. So we're really fortunate to have Dave all the way from, I believe, sunny and 13 degrees Kelowna, BC. I know you can see Dave's checkered shirt there, but he has flip-flops and shorts on. He just come in from cutting the grass, so we're a little bit jealous, given that we'll be shoveling snow for the next 3 days. But Dave, welcome to the Hot Stove, and I will say very, very infrequently during the Hot Stoves do I get emails prior to the Hot Stove letting me know how excited people are to for the edition of the evening. But a couple of your teammates have already reached out to me, say they're looking forward to seeing it. And I actually had a personal call from Dan Smith, and I don't want to give too much away, but he was mentioning about a special training exercise you guys tried one night out at the ice house when you showed up early for a game and thought you might go for a half-hour jog before to try to really tune yourself up for the game, but maybe ended up being a little too tired. So maybe the experiment wasn't worth it. So Dan's on tonight all the way from Ottawa in Ontario. So welcome, Dave, and I'll turn you and Ryan over to the audience for the show tonight. Thanks again for joining us.
Great, thank you.
As usual, we will leave Clark to make sure to be the enforcer of the chat window, which we will welcome everybody to involve themselves with later on. So, Clark, you're always far too kind to me. So, I don't know about that expert or smart portion, but I will send you the extra $10 for those nice comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. It's up to 20 this year. Inflation.
All right. Well, inflation everything's going up. So. There we go. Thank you so much, Clark. Dave, I know we've exchanged a few emails. It's one of those times I know when I'm doing these things, I feel like by the time I've done the research portion of it, especially for people that I haven't met before, I usually feel like I know them better than I probably should at this point. So nice to see you. Nice to talk to a Purple and Proud alumni. So first, let's start right there. What's when you think Western, what's the first memory that comes to mind?
I think it's great relationships. I was thinking that today, just when I was thinking about the comments I might make here, but like with Dan Smith and Rick Scher and Dave Edwards and a bunch of the guys that I was playing with there, and thinking how even if you don't stay in touch with them very much, when you do see them again, there's great memories and there's a lot of jovial, just fun, and that they think back at all the things that you did. So for Weston, for me, that was what it was. And I enjoyed law school and the relationships I made there with the different guys, but it's a different experience with the guys you're playing hockey with, so. And I was a little concerned when you mentioned that Rick Shearer had a picture, like you can put comments on, but I'm not sure. Like you check those out first, eh?
I'll keep an eye on those. I do have one picture for you, but it's an okay one. I think
Okay.
it might be this one here that you might like a little bit. It's that I believe is the 73-74 team, and I
Oh
think
wow.
if we look bottom, I want to say bottom in the middle in the right hand side, back row, the third in sort of
Oh yeah.
thing. I think
Yeah.
that I thought I'd bring that picture up. How much do those, and is it goes without saying that, even if you haven't seen a team picture for a while, does especially those team pictures, how important they are, and how you kind of look back and kind of automatically when you see those pictures, it's kind of the whether it be the apparently the pregame warm up routine that you tried to run through. Do those
Yeah.
stories and those thoughts come to mind real quick?
Absolutely. Yeah. I see that everybody's got a little more hair than they probably do now. And it's great to see Ron Watson. Ron was great to me to allow me the first year just to be able to practice with the team, because I didn't want to play with the team when I was starting first year law school. Everybody gives you horror stories about how difficult it's going to be or how hard it's going to be. And once I got in there and doing the work, it was fine. But it allowed me to practice with the team and stay in shape and do all those things, and then be able to play a full year the next year. So I appreciate everything Ron did for me.
Now, kind of coming in, I always like to ask pretty much anybody, no matter what point they started playing the game, where did the love of hockey start for you?
Well, when most kids start at 3 now, and my dad took me out. My dad wasn't a hockey player, but it was probably 5 when I first started learning how to skate. And when I turned 8, which is really late nowadays for starting to play hockey for many kids, I remember I didn't want to play. So I had a love for the game, and I talked to kids at the skating camps all the time about this. And the reason I didn't want to play was I was afraid that I wouldn't be very good compared to the other kids. And my dad, in his wisdom, said, I'm going to make you play this 1 year. And if you don't like it after that, you can throw it away. And I played the 1 year and loved it and had good success in it. And then, as you know, it just snowballs, And I always think of my dad's wisdom there, where now, you often say, well, don't force the kids to do things they don't want to do. But sometimes getting pushed into it just to experience it. And that's what my dad did. And it was awesome. After that, I wouldn't stop.
And obviously you mentioned it there. You go down and play in the States. You come up here to play at the university level in Canada. Was there a big difference between the two back then, or where did that kind of transition was that like kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it is to some extent, because it's, I don't know if that's the right word, but more high profile, and it's a more of a big deal there in that respect at that time. I know the big difference I found from playing major junior with the Marlies and then Peterborough. When I went down there, it was the college hockey at that time, and it still probably is, but it was just all speed, and skating, and I think that was part of it because of the rules at that time too. But in Canada with the major junior, it was more using your head and thinking more, and so when I went down there, because I was a skater, I loved it, but you also wanted to apply the thinking and everything else while you're moving your feet and all of that. So it was a big transition for a lot of guys that maybe weren't strong in their skating and didn't have the speed, but that was the biggest difference I noticed there. But
Now, living that student athlete lifestyle and being in law school at the same time, did the buddies like the fact that you knew the lay of the law and that you could, if anybody got in any trouble, that things that no, I'm sure everybody,
well,
everybody
yeah,
acted properly, right?
Ryan, I got a few guys off. So it's
It always helps to know a friend who knows a thing or two.
yeah.
That's for sure.
Hey,
So,
I'll tell you. I'll just tell you this with Roger Nielsen, and we'll talk about Roger.
yep.
And he was like Ron in many ways, like a great person as well as a great coach. And I always remember first going to Philly, and one of the first times I played with Roger in Peterborough, so we knew each other really well. I remember one time driving to the rink, and Rog had a tendency to go a little fast, and he got pulled over. And then, when you talk about getting in trouble with the law, the police officer said, license and registration, please, or whatever. And Raj pulls it out, but he also gives him a Flyers card with, head coach Roger Nielsen, Philadelphia Flyers. And the guy was just ready to, probably give him a ticket. And then he looks at the card and he goes, "Oh, Raj, team's doing pretty well this year, eh, buddy?" And he said, just slow it down, okay? Just slow it down.
Well, it never hurts because the only issue is now with hockey fans being so, across the years sort of things, they probably now go, "Yeah, well, team's playing okay. What's going on with your third line winger, though?
Yeah,
You thinking about moving him or all those sort of things?" So those conversations come all too well, right? Sort of thing. So, so those things are fun, obviously. For you, at what point, you're studying law, there's the hockey involvement sort of thing. When did the transition to the skating? Because I know you mentioned earlier when we were kind of talking, you started doing some camps even earlier on in your kind of your hockey playing days sort of thing. Did you realize the love for that instructional side of things early?
Yeah, but I think it was mainly because when I went down there, people were asking me to try to teach some skating to some of their kids. Like they had a great fan base there, and the Blue Line Club was awesome, and so that's what prompted me. I started doing some camps, and then it just spiraled, and I loved it because I loved working with kids and trying to help kids and make a difference with them, and also the technical side, and we can talk about that a little later with video projection and all those sorts of things. But it just started there where you start breaking down the stride, and it gets really creative, and you can do a lot of different things. And so that's where I started it when I was 19 down there, and then I continued it even when I was practicing law, for sure. And a lot of times it was just to raise money for figure skating, and my girls were in figure skating and all of that. So, I kept it up until I got more and more players, and then Dallas, eventually we can get into that too. But then it started getting where even with the skating camps we had, when I started really getting into it in Winnipeg and Kelowna and Vancouver and Calgary, it was like 2,000 kids, 2,200 kids in a summer, and I was on the ice 10 hours a day, and the biggest comment people said was, how do you keep that energy up? Like you're as fired up after the 10th hour. But I loved it, and that's where I got into playing tunes, and so every time we had the camps, and I still do it to this day, I've got the playlist going, and we crank it up. And I had some pretty good experiences with Roger and Philly with that, and we can talk about that another time too. But that's where I got into skating and working with players,
And obviously, as you said, it's been a business you've had and you've worked and done with for so long, sort of thing. Is it a scenario where, as you say, the on ice video projections, and then before, was it a scenario where you saw what maybe other people were doing and realized that it needed a little more energy or something like that in order to keep people engaged, kind of thing?
I'll tell you one thing I thought of. Well, I mean, I thought of it before, but with all that I have done, and I think I might have commented in some of the information I sent you, but we all talk about thinking outside the box, and I found when I look at my life with Law and with the skating and the pros and in the hockey, it's for me it was like you think outside because there is no box. Do you know what I mean? Like and I can get into that more with Law, where I tried different things and so the problem with thinking outside the box is you got this box, this is how it's done. Mm-hmm. And then you start to go out from that. But the challenge is that your baseline is always the box. You know, you're expanding from what the box is. And I always found it better just to have a blank sheet. And even with skating, it was like, what do I see? What needs to be changed to create speed and efficiency in their skating? And then taking every area of it and then developing it. And then how do you teach it, like communicate it? And that's when I got into video before people really were spending a lot of time on breaking down skating, you know? So, you know, so it wasn't really thinking, hey, it should be done better. That's probably in the back of my mind. But for me, it was more just, you know, how can we make these players the best skaters that they can possibly be? And yeah, there's so much to that. But that's the way, that was my mindset, was just find ways, you know, video projection, and then even off ice, simulated skating, where you know, I told players anything you do on the ice, you can, in terms of skating technique, you can do off the ice. And you know, so our skating camps, I built them around seeing, like I'd show them video, Korea or other guys that had good strides and break it down. And then I would have them practice it through simulated skating off the ice. Then they would go on the ice and do it. And then they would see themselves, you know, with video afterwards to make those changes. If they're kicking their heels up too high or they weren't pushing wide enough, their body lean was too far forward. And so it was a process like that. And then where video projection came in was, and video projection, all it really is, but when I say all it really is, when I first started doing it, it was a lot more complex than it looks. Basically, I had a big house on the ice in one end and one corner, and I had a big screen on the front and rear projection, and players would skate down into it. And so what I was trying to accomplish was the biofeedback, the immediate feedback. And so players, when I'm working with them and our other instructors, they would think they were doing the arm swing the way I wanted to, but they couldn't really see themselves. And I would tell them, watch your gloves and don't bring them across your body. And when you're trying to catch guys, I want you driving your arms more directly ahead. And so what I started looking at, not with hockey, but with other sports, was, you know, how do you develop technique faster? And what do they do? And a lot of it was biofeedback, immediate feedback. And it wasn't hockey. It was like whether it was figure skating, or I think at some points it was tennis, and then, you know, watching themselves perform while they're performing, you know. So what we call kinesthetically, then if a player's skating down the ice and I'm telling him to focus on push wider, you know, then he's watching himself, and then he can make that correction in real time. And then he feels how it should feel when you're doing it properly. So with arm swing, even we did backward skating on it. And the challenge was, you're in a bright arena and you need darkness to show the picture. So, you know, I experimented with, you know, a roof or like a flap coming forward, so you get it dark in where the picture is, but it was bright where the camera was shooting from. And you know, it changed kids like right away. And so there were things like that I remember the first time you needed a lot of brightness or ANSI lumens. And so at that time, it was like 3,000 anti-lumens would make it bright enough so you could get a good picture in an arena. And I remember the first video projector I bought for that was like $16,000. And now you can get one for 2,000 or 1,500 or with 3,000 ANSI lumens. So it was I spent a lot of money trying to do different things, but they worked, And then of course the fun I had with them too was a lot of the NHL guys, especially, I had a lot of fighters, like Rocky Thompson and Sandy McCarthy and a number of them. But and my son used to always say, "Dad, who you got in the camp this summer?" And he'd look at it and say, "Dad, you should sell tickets." They're great guys. But I remember I got Rocky Thompson. All the kids knew him, and Rocky was such an amazing guy, great guy. And so I had him shadow box for me. I videotaped it, and then we'd bring the kids on the ice, and I wouldn't spend a lot of time with this, but I'd say, "Who thinks they can take on Rocky Thompson?" And they're all like looking at each other and laughing, and and then they shadow box with him. We'd bring him up on the screen, and he'd be throwing punches, and the kids would be ducking and trying to hit him. And so we've had a lot of fun with it too, So yeah.
And that's, I know, obviously, and I've heard a lot of these stories over the years. You mentioned Roger Nielsen. Obviously, there was so much talk of Roger being one of the first ones to really engage with video replay and reviewing video content. Is that kind of that, as you say, that was that time when those who were kind of seeing things, as you say, a little bit outside of the box, were realizing that now when you're watching a game, there's iPads on the bench, and as soon as the play is done, there's a guy with an iPad. He's taking a look at the last play, sort of thing. Are you kind of saying, old news?
Well, Roger. I don't think when I played for him, and it was only a short, like a half a season actually before I went to UMD. But I don't think he was as much into video then, but he got more and more. And so mine was just a separate thing, but I mean, it was the same idea. And the cool thing is, Roger was like that. He just wanted to find ways to, I remember him putting in, not Tony Featherstone, Ron Stackhouse. These names may mean nothing to you, but Ron Stackhouse was a great big defenseman. And Roger was a math teacher too. So he always was coming up with these creative ideas, and I remember like he put him in for a penalty shot one time, and they had to change the rules, like because Ron could come right out and he had a long reach, he'd poke check the guy, and the guy wouldn't want to shoot until he had a good scoring chance, and so they had to change the rules there. And then when I think another time, the other thing he did was when we were near the end of the game and we got a penalty, then he just kept throwing another guy out just to kill time. And we had too many men on the ice to give him another penalty. But it got rid of the game, And so he was so creative that way. And, guys that do that, and there's so many other guys, I'm sure, that are creative that way. They do it because they want excellence, and they want to find ways to maybe not breaking the rules that way, but I mean just with video and so forth. And what I always tell players is like when I talk about video now, I always talk about it like it is old school, like really old school. But when can you ever go up in the stands and sit there and analyze your game and go slow-mo and look at your stride or look at your forecheck, or look at how you're playing players or angling them? It is commonplace, but sometimes I find like that because it seems so commonplace that guys don't use it enough. And I used to drive the girls in our academy crazy because I would be going through face-offs. I'd be going through, like situations where they were doing fine, but it could be better. and they needed to be better, and they had to see it. And I know when I went to Philly, when you get NHL guys, and I had been working with them, so it wasn't anything new, but the best way to convince guys that they need to work on their skating is show them their video. And, because they say, hey, Dave, I'm in the show, I know how to skate, but they, once you show them their video, and then it's like, wow, like, what do I need to do? And the funny thing is, Paul Kariya, I only worked with him. Andy Murray had me down when Kariya had his fight with Anaheim, and he wasn't playing at the time. And so he was in Calgary, and Andy called me to come down and work with him. But, Paul Kariya should have said, hey, Dave, I know how to skate, But the reason he was as good as he was, he just said, like, like I'd videotape him, and I'd bring him in, I'd show him like his heels are coming up too high, and he'd say, what do you mean they're coming up too high? How do I change that? What do I have to do? And then, I always tell kids that when I get the midget AAA guys that come in, and they've got the big egos, and I'm saying, you're the last guy that should have the big ego. Kariya could have a big ego, but the reason he's as good as he is, and the same with Jerome McGinley and the other guys, is because they're humble guys. They want to learn. They want to get better. They're like sponges, and that's, so the video part of it there is never ending if guys want to get better. And I'm sorry to keep talking.
No.
I'll let you
I enjoy listening. Go on.
But with Tampa Bay, I'm trying to think. Well, anyway, with Marty Murray, like I always remember Craig Ramsey, who was an assistant coach there, and Craig took over for Roger when he had his illness. And Craig and I played together with Roger, but I remember Craig telling me, like, they had to kick him out of the video room. Marty Murray was in there the next day going through everything, and just like a sponge. And it was almost too much where they had to kick him out. But that's why he won the top scorer in the league, and he's like 5'8" or whatever, and he won a Stanley Cup. But there's so many good examples, and the funny thing is I use Tom Brady all the time. Now he's no longer playing probably, but just as an example of guys, because so many guys don't think they have the ability, and they, we've got this continuum where we've got guys that don't think they're good enough. They don't have enough self-worth, self-belief in themselves. And then you get the other guys that are the ego guys that the computer shut off. And so I'm always working. I love working with the guys that don't believe in themselves. And Brady was one of those guys, but he did believe in himself, and I won't get into all that, but guys don't realize, players don't have any clue how good they can get if they really have the right mindset. And that's what breaks my heart more than anything, working with players, is seeing guys that don't do what they need to do because they don't think they're going to get much better, or they have this lid on, and that's as good as they're going to get. It's.
I know you obviously you work with Philly. You said obviously skating coach with Dallas, Vancouver. You've worked with a bunch of guys individually. I had to giggle because the hockey fan in me, when I'm looking through some of the detail you sent me, and the one line that said, "The Kevin Lowe sign up, some guy named Gretzky."
Oh yeah.
Well, whenever that Gretzky name comes out, it just pops in people's eyes, right?
It was more like, I focused on, all my focus was the passion was to make kids better faster, and more importantly, and that's why I started POE once I left Philly, was to impact kids' lives with character, faith, and values. And it was such an exciting time. I sold the business recently, a year or so ago, but it was such an exciting time because, kids are emailing me back, investment guys in New York now that, heard about, the main man, what I call the main man, and changed their lives and focused, and so it was really important that way, but where my downfall was not with my admin staff, like I took care of them and all that, but what I was thinking about there was in our skating camps, we'd have like one of the ladies, Donnelly Bannon, who was excellent, and she would take registration. And there was one year that, and I changed it pretty quickly, but I think it was Craig McTavish or Kevin Lowe phoned in and just said, we want to book some kids coming up to the skating camp. And I was fortunate to have Scotty Niedermeyer and Jerome's kids, and I got a lot of NHL kids coming through. And so they wanted to sign up, but in those days too, our camps were so full, like by February, that you couldn't get other kids in. And so Donnelly had this Kevin Lowe, and the way she told me afterwards, she said, Dave, I had this phone call from a guy named Kevin Lowe, because she doesn't know anything about hockey. That was my big mistake. And she said, and then there was a Craig McTavish that called too. And she said, I told them they'd have to be on a waiting list. And then she said, but when they mentioned there was Gretzky was having a kid come in too, she said, that name rang a bell to me. So I said, Donnelly, you let those guys in no matter what. Okay, we're going to make room for them. And then the other funny one about that was Craig McTavish's wife came in one day and her kid, and they hadn't paid yet. And so Donnelly confronted her and said, we really do need the money for the camp. And the wife said, look, Craig's good for it, okay? But just funny stories like that of really having to train the staff.
When you get to obviously a scenario where you're working with the Dallases and Vancouvers and stuff like that, as you say, you're working with sometimes the third, fourth line guys, sometimes the big wigs sort of thing. But how often, as you said earlier, is it a scenario where it's the people who are at that upper echelon? How many times you hear about the Sidney Crosbys, the Connor McDavids, the people who think that they do and know and have it all. Those are the ones who are always looking for that next little piece to kind of get themselves a little bit further up the totem pole and just improve, right?
Yeah, and I mean that has always been my experience, that the guys that should have the big egos, and that's what I talked about, the continuum, the guys that are the best of the best. But, I remember Jerome, like I worked with Jerome when he was just going with Calgary. So I was working with some of the Calgary's players, and Jerome was one of them. And again, even at that time, I had video prints and stuff I'd go through with him, and he was just like a sponge. But the next time down the road, which was just a few years ago, that I started working with him again, and it was only briefly because I had to go to Winnipeg and that, but they have a place in Kelowna, and so he's always had his kids in our skating camps. And he came down one day after I was on the ice working on tight turns with the players, and he said, Dave, like, you got my kids doing better tight turns than me, so I got to get back out in the ice with you again. But and that's the way they were. They just wanted to be better, and it's crazy in life. Like, that isn't just hockey. It's the sponges that keep getting better because they don't have the ego.
Obviously Philadelphia, the name Bobby Clarke and the Philadelphia Flyers always come together. I know you made mention of dealing with Bobby Clarke. There's, I'm sure, everybody seems to have an interesting story or two when it comes to dealing with Bobby Clarke.
Yeah, well, I have the greatest respect for him. And when Bobby Clarke called me, and that was 1999, and I'm sure he had some chats with Roger, and Roger knew all the skating stuff I did and the players I worked with. and Clarkie would have heard that from some Dallas guys, Les Jackson and so forth. But when they asked me they wanted to hire me as an assistant coach under an assistant coach's contract, but work specifically with skating during the season. And that was the first time they said that had ever been done. Like there was every team had a skating coach and all of that, but during the season, there was really, and having somebody as an assistant coach where you travel with the team or stay back home and work with the guys that were recovering from injury and all that was for a guy that wasn't, coaching in the NHL was a big step for them. And I've always respected him for that. And we got along. We didn't talk too much. And I know, he had to take his position with the players because, with negotiation of contracts and all that. But I always remember him. Like I'm sure when I went there, it was really different too, because I'd be out with Tocchet and a bunch of the guys working after practice and working on some quickness work and skating technique and all of that. And I'd have the tunes going, and Clarkie'd step out on his balcony, overlooking the ice. And I'm sure he thought, what the heck is this? Just cranking the AC/DC. But I think he bought in when they saw like how fast these guys were flying, and the guys loved it. And when I went there, Sammy Samuelson was like, I was working with the Phantoms as well as the Flyers. So John Stevens, I was on his side, and Sammy, but the philosophy still then, to a great degree, was if you wanted to get in shape and condition, then you just had to. They would just bag skate you. And when I got there, I wouldn't bag skate. And I remember telling some of the coaches that I won't bag skate guys because they're ruining their technique and you're not getting them quicker. And so everything I did with the guys was quickness stuff. And we'd have the tunes going and whatever, but it was, and so Rick Tocchet and those guys, they really bought in. And I mean, there was the odd Gino Ojic. I love Gino, but Gino was, he had his own pace. So you'd have Simone Gagne and Johnny Leclerc and Primo and these guys, doing the drill like 110%, pushing them faster than they would play in a game. And then Gino would get up and it'd be his turn. And he'd just ruin the whole tempo, He just kind of mosey around. But anyway, I should turn the light on here. But
it's one of those times where all of a sudden it just gets dark all of a sudden, right?
Yeah, I was relying on daylight there.
One thing I was going to say, you're obviously, when you're with the Flyers, and a couple names, obviously you mentioned Keith Primo, but Eric Lindros and those Philly teams were known for their size, and that was is that is it more difficult with a bigger guy to kind of work on the skating aspect, or they already know they have the size and they're kind of thinking traditionally, are they thinking more about the fact that they really want to work on the skating so that they can use the size but also you use the speed at the same time?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like most in overall, I think that the guys that are that have a larger stature had more difficulty, being agile and all that in their skating. But Eric was awesome to work with, and lots of funny stories with him. But he, a lot of those guys, you can get them faster. There were defensemen like Dan McGillis that I remember that, you can't necessarily change their quickness, but you can change their effective quickness on the ice. And by that, I mean, I always remember with Luke Shen, when I was working with the Rockets, Kelowna Rockets, I was working with the D-man. I had Luke stand in front of the net, like just off where he would normally play on the house. And I said to him, how quickly can you get from here to the boards, stick on the red line on the boards. And, you know, guys didn't know. And it was 1.6 seconds. And what I was trying to get across to them was like, you know, not reading and reacting, but reading and acting. Like if another player on the opposing team has the puck in your zone on the other side, and your D-man's pressuring him, the other D-man, and that puck goes behind the net to the other D-man or to the other forward, what I'm saying is, I mean, you have to do the system that your coaches ask you to. So if they don't want that second D-man, the front D-man, to leave the front of the net unless until the other D-man's back, which is, you know, for me, it wasn't good at all, as long as you've got a weak side winger in front in the slot in that area. But you know, I was saying to the guys that it's going to take you more than 1.6 seconds to figure out if you want to go or not. Or what happens is, by the time the puck leaves the one guy's stick and hits the other guy's stick, you're already too late. And now you've overcommitted yourself. So I was trying to teach Dan McGillis that, you know, that you, and, you know, he had to make sure I always was talking to the coaches and making sure we're on the same page, but he got faster just because he was anticipating and jumping sooner, you know, and no hesitation, and stick on puck and finishing guys, you know. So you know, even like the bigger guys were, you can make them faster by the way they play the game and they see the ice. And you know, and even Danny, I remember with Wayne Fleming, Wayne was asking, well, when Dan jumps up on the one side, you know, a player comes over the blue line and turns and delays, then if you're jumping up and you can do it because there's not another guy right there, then it was like, why is he fast on one side and not fast on the other? And it was his footwork. Like, you know, he's doing this one and trying to jump up, and because most of them, they don't want to cross over, and you don't want to cross over when it's down low, but up high there, if it's a situation is right, you're going to be faster jamming on the brakes and crossing over all in one stroke, and getting the stick on the puck again. So there are all kinds of different ways that you could help guys become faster, just by the way you taught them, you know. Yeah,
we're obviously in Olympic season, so I think it's you know, I know for the men's game this year it's a little bit different. Let's we're not going to get into the eternal, you know, NHLers and the Olympic debate, but you know, you've worked with the Canadian national team, you've obviously as well as been with the women's Olympic team sort of thing. Let's go. I guess given the fact that the women won the gold medal last night, I think we got to first some applause for the women winning the gold medal. You know, working with the women's Olympic team, you know, the hockey world has kind of obviously Jennifer Botterill doing some things on the broadcast side of things now as well. You know, talk about working with there's working with the guys in the NHL, and obviously the working with the women's Olympic team. You're working with the best of the best.
Yeah.
How much excitement is that?
Well, I mean, the first time I worked with the female Olympic team, Canada's one, not Sweden's. I did work with them later, but with Canada was in 1998, and that was before those Olympics. And it was interesting. I want to tell you, I love working with females because they have, you know, for the most part, they have no ego. They'll work twice as hard, and they'll do exactly what you say. And the challenge for me that first time when they asked me to come down and work with them, it was too late, but because I think I came in the summer before the Olympics started, and you know, and when I say it was too late, there were changes were made, but the challenge I had was they all, when they skated fast, they were almost like speed skaters. like, with their trunk. And so I came in and said, look, I want the low knee bend, which was 90, or actually I could show you pictures of Jennifer where she was even below 90, but you don't want to get too much below that. But I wanted them to pull their upper body back more, not upright. If you pull it up too much, your hip pulls in and then you shorten your stride. If you lean too far forward, you're not nearly as stable. And you also, again, pull your skate will come off the ice faster. So you don't get as much of a stride. So I had these players working, and I showed them with video about a 50 to 52 degrees upper body angle. And I remember taking out when I was down there, I met with an Olympic speed skating coach, and we had lunch, and I showed him pictures of Jennifer when I had worked with her, and like, he couldn't believe it. He said, how do you ever get them that low from the waist down and still have their upper body over their skates so that, they're better balanced and all of that. So the girls the girls changed. And a lot of that came from the simulated skating, doing the stuff off ice where they had to work on that, pull their shoulders back and move around. And so they were awesome to work with. And Shannon Miller was the coach then, and Cassie Campbell was there. And so I loved working with them. Like I said, the challenge was just, I made them change some things differently, even with arm swing and tight turns and even crossovers, where they're taught to, when they're taught to lean into the turn. And I want them to lean in from the waist down, but the upper body, I want them to lean out of the turn, to put the weight back over the skates. So, without getting into a whole bunch of things, but they did it for me, and they felt the difference. And a lot of them were mad because they felt like they'd been taught differently. And I'm not saying my way is the right way, but this goes back to what I was talking about when I said I liked, when I was 19, even then, starting with a white sheet and just saying, okay, if I want body position, even though the figure skaters may be teaching them to lean into turns, then, what works? And so I just found that, pushing wider worked rather than pushing too directly behind, all those different things. And so all I ever told players, especially at the elite level, is all I want you to do is try it. And if it doesn't work for you, don't use it, And I always remember, who was it, Brashear, Donald, when he came to Philly. And that's where you have to get, when you're building relationships with guys too. Donald sitting in the players' video room or the TV room or lounge, and he had just come in, and I said, Brash, we need to jump out in the ice, and I need to videotape some of your skating. We're just going to work on a couple of things. And he didn't even look at me. and then finally I said to him, hey, Brash, I said, don't get so effing excited. And then he just cracked up, and then he came out in the ice. But even when I had him out in the ice, he said, Dave, I'm pushing my legs this way. And if you ask guys that are in biomechanics, they'll, a lot of time, like they'll say, when you drive your leg more on a not straight back or not straight out, but just on a 45, then you've got a counterbalance with the arm coming across. And I'm saying you don't, and I test guys, and you can still be pushing wide and gripping the ice, but driving your arms more directly ahead. And when guys were doing it, they were doing it faster. Even Ty Domi, I could tell you other stories with Ty, but it was again the same thing. But Brash would say, this is why it won't work. And the fortunate thing for me was I was always able to demonstrate it, and I still can. So it makes such a difference if you can show guys, say, here's what I'm talking about, rather than just telling them. And so it, you get guys to buy in, and but my experience with the Olympic team that way was great. And even today, like I have Melody Dayu, who, you know, I won't get into a lot about Melody, but she's awesome. And she came a few years ago before she was on the Olympic team and was at McGill and asked if she could come down for 3 weeks and just work with me. And on the skating side, because she's got great hands and all of that. And so she did. And, you know, I had vert equipment, which I won't get into, but it's explosive equipment that you can do where you're not going to injure yourself, but you've still got full resistance. And but we did a lot on the ice and that kind of thing. And so recently she was down again but when they were in Kelowna. But, you know, they're always wanting to get better and learn. And it was the same with the Swedish girls too, the Swedish Olympic team in 2010. So it's great working with that level of player, and they are who they are and have the ability they do because of their mindset.
I know we could probably talk for hours, and it looks like a few questions are coming in, and I want to be cognizant of time. But every time I talk to every time I talk to Clark, he says to me, "Ryan, I love Dave. He's a great guy. You got to hear the Tsunami story," and that's where he leaves it. Every time he leaves it to me, he goes, "He's got a Tsunami story. I'm not going to go." He goes, I won't do it justice, so I'm just going to tell you." Dave's got a Tsunami story. And I kind of said to him coming into today, I'm like, you got to give me a little more. My basic rule of interviewing, you're supposed to know 60% of the answers before you ask the question. He goes, trust me, it's a good story. So that's all I got. And I'm just going to be like everybody else and sit back and enjoy.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I didn't realize, man, time goes fast.
Time flies when you're having fun.
We're just warming up, buddy.
We'll get number 2, 3, and 4 in. We're good.
Yeah,
we'll get a few more in.
Yeah. Yeah. With the Tsunami, first time our family was ever in Asia, 2004, went down there. We were on an island, PP Island near Thailand and Bangkok. And then on Christmas Eve, that's when the tsunami hit. Or so not in the evening, but on the 24th, I think it was the day before Christmas, and we were on this island, and the only concrete building, they had one hotel that was there, and what happened? It was in the morning. We had our kids with us. 6 of our family were there, and my son and daughter were down by the shore at the other end of the island. It wasn't that big an island. And so all of a sudden in the morning, Jamie and I are sitting outside on the kind of porch, and all these people start running by, and they're just freaking out. And, you know, we didn't know what would happen, but I'm like probably you, where, you know, when the fire alarm goes in the hotel, I just roll over. It's just, you know, nothing big. So Jamie said, we got to go, you know. So she fortunately ran and took off. And I was there like an idiot asking people, like, what's going on? And they're just running by me. And so I managed to make it. Everybody was running up this hotel because it had floors and it was concrete. And the locals knew what was going on because I guess they saw all the water go out, and of course I didn't know anything. But then everybody's trying to run up these stairs, and I'm at the bottom of the stairs and letting people go too because I wasn't sure what was going on. And the next thing I know, the way I can describe it is, it was like being hit by a Mack truck and being thrown into a huge washing machine. So I just feel this bang. And I'm all of a sudden I'm upside down and I have no control of my body. And some, you know, I always remember some people afterwards were saying, "Hey Dave, why didn't you grab onto the railing?" and I, you know, they said the wave was coming through at 600 kilometers an hour. So it went through buildings, like most of them were all wooden buildings and stuff like that. And I went through with it and ended up at the other end of the island. And when the wave hit, like I knew I was going to die. And but the thing I kept thinking, and obviously this is happening in portions of a second, was just, I can't die yet. And this may get into religion, but because I haven't done all of what God wants me to do, I'm not finished yet. And the irony for me as a Christian is, when I die, I'll still feel that way, no matter what. You're never finished doing the kind of work you want to help kids and make a difference and all of that. So anyway, by the time my body stopped, my head was underwater, but I managed, and I had tables and chairs and wood all over me, but I managed to get my nose and mouth just above water so I could breathe. And there was a kid from New Zealand who came by, and he was looking for his buddy because he'd lost his buddy in the wave. And he saw some guys were yelling, there's a guy underneath the water there. And so he started pulling me out. And I always remember, and I've talked to him after, and we've met, like, it's just an amazing thing. But, I told him, he had to change how he was trying to pull me out, and a couple of other guys came. And so anyway, they took me up to the floor, one of the floors in the hotel. And, my leg had been all torn up, and I'd lost muscle in one of the legs and some muscle. And they just wrapped it in a sheet. And I'm just sitting there praying, because there's my wife, Jamie, and my other daughter and her husband, and then Sarah or Ginny Lindsay and Adam they managed to run up the mountain, I guess, because they were further away, but I didn't know that at the time. But anyway, long story short, when they took me to Phuket, which is just a town right beside the ocean there. And then they eventually took me to Bangkok, and it started with, I'm going to lose my leg because of infection. And then you may not lose your leg, but that you're never going to be able to skate again, or you may, I think the second thing they were telling me was they might have to amputate. But hats off to them. Like, they didn't do the surgery I got when I came home, but they were smartly focusing on just the infection. And so when I had to go down and get everything done up and had further surgery when I was in Bangkok, and I was there for a month. So that's what happened to me. And then when I came back home, I was in the hospital in Kelowna for about a week or so, and then they did skin grafting, and then I was off for a month where I couldn't weight bear on my leg. And then when I did start weight bearing, they told me it'll be a year before you really get to skate again. And I'm saying I'm going to be on the ice this summer, And I always tell the players that for me, like, it was a good example, because after what I was doing, once I could weight bear and didn't have to have crutches, was I was running in Rutland Arena, like 60 flights of stairs, top to bottom, every day. And then it only lasted a week, because by the third day, when I was going back to physio, a great lady, and she just looked at me and she said, "Dave, I'm just letting you know this is the last day I'm going to work with you." And my mouth dropped, and it was like, "What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? I'm the most motivated guy you'll ever have." And she said, "You come in here," and she said,
Oh, we might have lost Dave. Clark, we're going to pull you in because I think Dave's having some connection. I heard the international noise there. It was, I don't know if it was the low battery noise or what it was. I know you've heard the tsunami story a few times, and you were, as I jokingly said, you would only tell me the tsunami story. This one is it's pretty epic.
Pretty scary, to be honest with you, to hear about that, and hear. I didn't know how hard or how fast the wave was moving. That's incredible to think that he actually survived that. And I think the mental side of things, to not know where the rest of your family is for that time, whether they survive, whether they got to higher ground, is the even more difficult than probably your individual circumstance.
So looks like we'll see if we get Dave back here in a second. And for those of us and those got questions, I know we've got a couple of nice comments coming in. We'll get to those in a few moments as well. But I know that I would be remiss in my other hat duty here, Clark, to not give you a chance to talk about the group that you've got and the fact that we're back to competition. I know for some folks who are from an alumni perspective and everything, they always want to know what's going on with the team. Take us through where you guys are at right now. I know the group looks a little bit different this time of year, but still a pretty good group on the ice.
Yeah, no, we're really happy to be back. Obviously, with the restrictions in Ontario and the shutdown we went through in January, we weren't able to practice or play. But January 31st, we were back and back into full practice. We practiced for 9 days, and we had 2 games last weekend against Guelph. So we were really happy to be back. And many businesses, people, student athletes, everybody's been through so much the last couple of years with COVID and everything. We're just happy to be back practicing and doing what we do. So, as Ryan mentioned, unfortunately, with the delay in getting back and some of the uncertainty going forward, even where we are now, we lost a number of our seniors to pro hockey, with school being online. They're able to finish their schooling in Europe or in the US while they're playing pro. So we help facilitate them to get there, and they're all doing very, very well, enjoying themselves, and they're off to their pro career. But our group is great. We're really happy. We got a nice group. Believe it or not, we've been off for 9 weeks, but this is our bye week. So we actually don't play this weekend. So another break, unfortunately, but it is what it is with how the schedule had to evolve around COVID. So, but no, we got 4 games left, 2 more weeks of regular season after this weekend, and then back into the playoffs. And although the team has changed a fair bit with losing some leadership and some skill on the ice, we're still hoping to get back to the national championships. They're again out in the Maritimes to finish what we started in 2020.
And here's the best part about the internet: Dave's back.
Yeah, there he is.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I won't keep you guys. But I didn't realize it unplugged when I was talking there. But anyway,
I think you had the wrong body angle. You probably pulled your skate come off the ice. You probably.
Yeah. So do you want to leave it, or do you want me to finish, or
finish up? A great story.
Yeah.
Clark was there, so I just pulled him in for a time fill.
Yeah.
And we always want to give an update on where the team's at, so that's what makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, the one example I give our players is just this whole incident with the physiotherapist. And what she said to me was, she said, "Dave, look, every time you come in here, you think you're helping yourself, but she said, your leg's so swollen, I can't even work on it." So she said, "Why don't you do what you think will make it better? And then in a month, when it doesn't work, come and see me again." And it was such great advice. And I see so often with players, not just the pro guys, but young guys, where they get some kind of injury and they're pushing themselves to get back. And a lot of times, just wanting it so badly is not a good thing. You've got to be smart about it too. And I sure learned my lesson from that. The thing I will tell you, the first time I got back on the ice, everybody's cheering and all that stuff. And that was like in March or April. And I remember leaving the rink, and I remember breaking down in the car, and it was almost like I was never mad at God, because when I came out of the water and I could breathe again, I must have sounded like Billy Graham. It was like, "Thank you, Jesus." Like I was able to breathe. But what I remembered was being in the hospital where they came in, we found out my daughter and my son were alive, and they came in, and of course I was crying. I was so excited, but I couldn't express it the way I wanted to, because the guy beside me was from Sweden, and I remember meeting them seeing them with their family and all that, and he had lost his wife and the daughter, and so when I got off the ice and I was just like, I can't believe this. I can skate like I did before. And, my whole family is alive, and a quarter of a million people died in that thing. I almost got mad at God, like almost reverse, like why am I so fortunate? But the two things that I learned from it. One was, first of all, that there's some urgency. Like, if I want to be an example for Christ, or I want to make a difference in the world, and with the people I work with, and that sort of thing, and the kids that you come into contact, and this is for all the hockey guys, whether you have a faith or not. Like, I think we do, but we really don't understand what an impact we have and an influence on kids and younger players, and even, pro guys and junior guys. But there is some urgency not to just push off. Again, I'm talking about my faith when I say, and I never pushed my faith ever on people, but I talk to them about character and faith and values, and if they want to talk more. And that was with Roger. It was like when he was dying, and we were in Buffalo, and I remember in his hotel room, we're reading the Bible, and he starts talking about the interviews that he's had on TV and stuff, and his concern had nothing to do with himself. It was just, is he sharing that message the right way to people? That's the kind of sacrificial guy he was. And he told me that he had never had more peace in his life than when he was, on his deathbed, basically. And so, if we have something to share with people that is making a difference in our lives, then for me, it was like, don't wait around when a kid really wants to talk about something and try to make a difference. And, the second thing was the responsibility. Like, when you have, Ryan, when you're involved with the reporting and things like that, and coach, there's a big responsibility on us to live the life right and as best we can, and to have an impact on other people, and to be selfless, and have that kind of humility to make a difference, So, and so there's a huge responsibility, and there's some urgency to it, But I've been so blessed, with our family, and with my scholarship, my wife, Jamie, that I met when I was down in UMD, and we're in our 50th year this year, which is unbelievable. No, I shouldn't say it's unbelievable. I'm just so grateful that we can be best friends and have that, But again, with those kinds of things comes responsibility. So.
Got a few comments and a couple questions. So I figured Clark was here, so I figured we'd just keep it a round table discussion.
Sure.
Got Eric checking in. Eric Skillen said, "Great to see you. Lots of great stories. Congrats on the success in multiple careers. Hope to see you in person a few times." We're keeping Dave by a few minutes, so I don't want to keep anybody too late. So what do we got? Bob Travail enjoying this very much, especially the discussion about the skating technique. Everybody enjoys for a different aspect. Ron Watson, hi Dave. Well, what a treat to see you after all these decades. I hope you, Jamie, and the family doing well. Do you remember having to practice on the outdoor rink? There we go. We got our first question.
Yeah, I sure do. What I remember more, though, was I had a debtor-creditor class at it was like 7 or 7:30 in the morning, and a judge ran it, at the law school. And I would go to those early morning practices, and I was up at 4 or 5 or whatever, and then we did our thing in an hour, and we came back. And I'd come down into that big auditorium late every time for debtor creditor class. And I knew the judge, he gave me the dirtiest look, but I knew he thought I slept in every time. And he didn't realize I was out busting my gut before everybody was awake. But yeah, I had a great time there and appreciated everything Ron did, for sure.
Dan Smith, assuming you've obviously we talked about the women's team, players on both teams, amazing skating skills and speed. What impressed you most about the women's teams, both on all sides this year? Because obviously the game's getting better across the world.
Yeah, I think for me it was the speed. And usually I've been critical, like thinking when I see Olympics in the past, and I can't, but anyway, where I thought the U.S. team were better skaters and they were faster and all that. This time, Canada's team they're both fast. And, but I love the way they play the game, and the Canadians were playing hockey the way I love seeing it played. Where they're in their face, stick on puck, pressure everywhere. And both teams were like that. But they didn't do it like, chickens with their heads cut off. They were smart about it. And, but I love the speed, and I love the pressure on the puck all the time.
And another question here from our assistant coach, Pat Ouellette. With all the players you've worked with, this is probably going to be like asking your favorite child, which is the most eager to learn and got better as well at the same time?
Do you know what? There's been so many like that, that I think of, with Danny Heatley, with Melody Dayu I mentioned, one of the girls, the cap from the Swedish Olympic team that came over, and I worked with her for a number of times, even Jerome. And so, I mean, the thing is, and it's kind of what I pointed out earlier, the ones that are the best are the ones that are like that. And you do see big improvements, and I had one former NHLer just send me some video from Dallas the other day. And, he's showing me a player skating, and I can see right away how he can correct it, like how we can work with him and make a difference and change him. And here's the thing too, and I won't, my daughter's got martial arts she's got to get to, so but I'd love to go on. But, it's kids, they can make the changes if they want to make the changes. And my concern is always, like, I talked to a dad last week who had lunch. I had lunch with his son, but the way I described it to him was like baking a cake. And I because he was a kid that what I call watches the game. When I look at his video, he doesn't play the game. Like he looks like he's in the game, but he gets there and he's not effective. Like he's not coming up with a puck and I can't remember all the terms in it, but it was like, your hard work, your resilience, your laser focus, your positive attitude, your humility, and your growth mindset. Those are all the ingredients you put in to make the cake of success. And I said, the challenge is most guys don't want to pay the price that it costs to have all those ingredients in the cake. So they cheat a little bit and they don't put them all in. And then years later, they wonder why their cake isn't good enough, And I told them, I said that, there's no ingredient for success. The success comes from just following the recipe. And that means all those ingredients have to be in there. And, I'll say that over and over again. It's the mind, and there's so many pieces that have to go into making us motivated, making us gritty, making us the way we need to be successful. My wife is, or not my wife, my daughter, Ginny, is all over me here. But
We will wrap it up for you, Dave. This has been a treat for me. I'll let Clark finish it out.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I really want to thank you for taking time to be on the hot stove tonight. I mean, some of your reminders about the responsibility we have as professionals in this game, and it doesn't just go to the on ice leadership; it's the off ice leadership that's just as important for all the young men and women that we mentor along the way. So I want to thank you for those reminders, for all your time, and I also want to tell you that picture of the 73-74 team we saw to start off, it actually has the most members in our wall of honor of any team in Mustang hockey history. So that was a very, very special team that you were a part of. So thanks again for being with us tonight. Enjoy the rest of the spring, I guess, out there. And thanks to Ryan. Thanks to all our guests on the hot stove tonight. Bob Stouffer from the Edmonton Oilers is up with us next in March. Check your emails for further details. Thanks, everybody, for being on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Say hi to the guys for me. Okay.
Well,
thanks.
Cheers.